Dr. Peter Glidden, your steadfast advocate for naturopathic medicine, holistic healing, and a free medical market. Today, we're going to continue to go down the rabbit hole so that I can try to help you understand what's really going on here, because it's just nuts what's happening. Look, we haven't had a free medical market since before anybody was born. The medical market in the United States and then Canada and then the European Union was overtaken by the pharmaceutical industry in the early 1900s. Congress granting the American Medical Association exclusive control over who could and who couldn't practice medicine, putting the MDs and the pharmaceutical industry into first place and kicking everybody else off of the bus of medicine. The chiropractors, the homeopaths, the naturopaths, the herbalists, the Ayurvedic practitioners, acupuncturists, everybody who wasn't an MD was kicked off of the bus of medicine, and every member of those professions have had to claw their way back. We're not in the mainstream, however. We haven't been in the mainstream since before anybody here was born, and this is a problem. Right now, I'm currently licensed to practice naturopathic medicine in 24 states, plus the District of Columbia, plus the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. However, it's a felony to practice naturopathic medicine, a jailable offense in Tennessee and Florida. And what's up with that? Well, it's the medical monopoly, which is so vast and so overarching that nobody even sees it as a monopoly. And this is a problem because absolute power corrupts absolutely. Right? I mean, and we're seeing it writ in large face now, although myself and my colleagues have been telling everybody about it for over 30 years. I'll speak for myself. I've been standing up on a hill waving a flag for over 30 years saying, look, we don't have a free medical market, and that's a problem, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Gary Null et al., Carolyn Dean, Melissa Friedman, a number of other people in 2010 published this report, Death by Medicine, arguing that the leading cause of death in the United States was medical treatments. More people died from medical treatments than died from cancer, than died from heart disease. This was published 14 years ago. And, there was all kinds of criticism about it. Oh, this can't be true. This can't be true. There was a lot of this article struck to the heart of cognitive dissonance, so people rejected it out of hand, as they do with most new ideas, which contradict the mainstream, right? I mean, the guy that discovered quantum physics was quoted as saying medicine or science evolves one funeral at a time, which means that the old generation has to die out before the new generation's ideas will be accepted because of cognitive dissonance. This is a problem, and it is overarching in all areas of human existence. This is not just a scientific phenomenon. This is not just a medical phenomenon, but it arcs across all aspects of our culture. So, MD-directed medical treatments, the leading cause of death in the United States. Oh, but that can't be true. You must be fudging the numbers. There must be another statistical explanation. Well, maybe. I don't think so, because lately, Johns Hopkins Medicine, this was just a couple of years ago, published a new study that suggests that medical errors now are the third leading cause of death. This was just talking about medical errors, right? Mistakes that were made by the doctors or by the hospital in the treatment of the patient. And the medical errors, according to Gary Null et al., were just one piece of the pie of one of the causes of death, right? This Johns Hopkins study didn't look at the other causes that Null et al. Looked at, but nonetheless, third leading cause of death in the United States. And everybody's okay with that, right? Oh, but then, of course, there's everything that happened during COVID, which is just, Tucker Carlson was talking to John Kirsch, Steve Kirsch. He was an MIT epidemiologist, and Kirsch unveiled the data which is undisputable, by the way, that's saying that the more vaccines you get, the unhealthier the kids are. The more vaccines you get, the unhealthier your kids are. The more vaccines you get, the unhealthier your kids are. But this all falling on deaf ears in the mainstream because we haven't had a free medical market for over 100 years. And cognitive dissonance, which is the foundation of the training of a medical professional, disallows anything which retracts from the norm, even if it's true. So how can all of this be happening? Right? Well, I think it's Stockholm Syndrome. I think it's a variation on Stockholm Syndrome. Here's what Wikipedia has to say about Stockholm Syndrome. I thought that this was interesting. It's a proposed theory that tries to explain why hostages sometimes develop a psychological bond with their captors. It is supposed to result from a rather specific set of circumstances, namely the power imbalances contained in hostage-taking, kidnapping, and abusive relationships. Then they go on to say that, it's probably not true. Probably is more of a theory than anything else, and it can't really be proven because how are you going to do an experiment with a control and all of that, right? But nonetheless, I am of the opinion that people in the world continue to respect their MDs because of Stockholm Syndrome, a variation of Stockholm Syndrome, I think, which started in World War II. It wasn't the chiropractors or the homeopaths or the naturopaths or the Ayurvedic practitioners or the acupuncturists or the traditional Chinese medical doctors who were doing inhumane experiments on the inmates of the concentration camps in World War II. It was the MDs. It wasn't the chiropractors or the naturopaths or the homeopaths or the herbalists or the Ayurvedic practitioners or the acupuncturists or the traditional Chinese medical practitioners who were killing people, who created the Zyklon B gas that killed all of the millions of people in the concentration camps of World War II. It was the MDs in the pharmaceutical industry. And then we've got the Tuskegee experiments, and then we've got everything else that's happened in the last 100 years that the medical doctors have inflicted upon us, the latest being the COVID jab and, the increasing vaccine schedules in the kids. And yet everybody still loves their MD. How can this possibly be? I mean, even if you can't wrap your brain around the fact that medical treatments are now considered by Johns Hopkins the third leading cause of death in the United States, you think there would be a congressional investigation there. But even if you can't bring yourself to believe that, because the cognitive dissonance is just stressing you out to the max, you cannot overlook the facts that chronic disease is escalating. The chronic disease is escalating. You cannot overlook the fact that just as many people die from heart disease now as 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, or just as many people get heart disease as they did years ago. The medical doctors can save people from dying from a heart attack and then another heart attack and then another heart attack, but they have no idea what causes it. They have no idea how to cure it. Autism is through the roof, Alzheimer's is through the roof, and we're okay with it. We give the medical doctors a pass. It happened under their watch. They are the exclusive gatekeepers of all things medical. In the United States, the only thing that can legally treat a disease is a drug. And yet, while the MDs have all of this power and all of this control, under their watch, we're getting sicker. And, oh yeah, the leading cause of bankruptcy, MD-directed medical treatments in the United States. The leading cause of death, or the third leading cause of death, depending on how you crunch the numbers, MD-directed medical treatments. And yet, everybody is in love with the MDs. How can this possibly be a thing? Well, the only explanation that I have is a variation on Stockholm Syndrome, plus the medical monopoly. Because really the only medicine that your insurance gives you access to is MD medicine. The only medicine that's practiced in your hospital is MD medicine. The only medicine they make TV shows about is MD medicine. And the only medicine they do research on at your university is MD medicine. So it's reasonable for the average person to think that, well, the MDs are better at what they do than everybody else, so let's give them a pass. But the MDs are not better at what they do than the other medical professions. They're, in fact, worse at what they do than the other medical professions. Ayurvedic medicine, homeopathic medicine, naturopathic medicine, chiropractic medicine, botanical medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, all of these disciplines, medical disciplines, attempt to cure the condition, whatever it is. Your medical doctor does not. Your medical doctor attempts to manage the condition. Your medical doctor doesn't even know what causes heartburn, for goodness sakes. And yet, you genuflect at their altar all of the time. And then, of course, there is the genetic scapegoat. So your medical doctor will pass off their lack of understanding of how the human body works, their lack of understanding of the nature of the disease process. They will pass off all of the failures that they've had: autism, Alzheimer's, the rise of chronic disease, the decrease in life expectancy. They will pass all of that off as saying, well, it must be genetic. Your condition is genetic. You have high blood pressure because you have the high blood pressure gene, although they can't tell you what gene or what chromosome it's on. It must be genetic. You have rheumatoid arthritis, so it must be genetic. You have whatever you have, it must be genetic. And when most people hear the word genetic, they cower in intellectual inferiority. Oh, it's genetic. Well, thank you, doctor. Thank you very much. You're the smartest person I've ever met. Oh, it's genetic? Thank you, doctor. Thank you very much. Now I understand it. Most people on the street have no idea what a gene is, don't even know what chromosomes are, and have no idea what the heck the doctor is talking about, but when 100 medical doctors get together and say something, it must be true. Case in point, everybody's heard about the BRCA gene, and it's the BRCA gene that causes breast cancer, and if you have the BRCA gene, you might as well have your breasts removed because it's only a matter of time until you get breast cancer. And, well, this is not correct. Because it's not the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes that cause breast cancer. It's mutations of those genes that cause breast cancer. Inquiring minds want to know, well, what do the unmutated genes do? What does the BRCA1 and BRCA2 gene do in an unmutated healthy state? Well, they fix gene mutations. What? They fix gene mutations? Well, wouldn't that be kind of an important thing to investigate? Why aren't we putting our money there? What is it that causes the gene to mutate in the first place? Well, holistic physicians argue it's environmental toxins, it's lack of nutrients, it's parasitic infections in the body. It's the stress of life that the body is unable to deal with because it doesn't have enough nutrients. It doesn't have enough raw materials to fix itself. People are consistently eating food all the time, which is hurting themselves. And the bodies are loaded with environmental toxins that the body does not have the ability to get rid of, and there's parasitic infections are everywhere all the time. These are the things that cause gene mutations. These are the things that cause the genesis of chronic disease. But oh no. Don't listen to the naturopathic doctor. He's a quack. Don't listen to Dr. Glidden and his colleagues because they're quacks. And they practice substandard, dangerous medicine. Their treatments are dangerous. And when in point of fact, the opposite is true. The medical treatments that are dangerous are the ones delivered by the MDs. Even Johns Hopkins is arguing this, right? Johns Hopkins is arguing this. Third leading cause of death, MD treatments. So, how can a situation like this exist? Because of the medical monopoly. You don't have access to my medicine or my colleague's medicine or anything else. It's out of the pocket. And you have to hunt for a naturopathic doctor. There are approximately 200 naturopathic doctors in the world right now that I would feel comfortable referring a patient to or a family member to. 200. Ayurvedic medicine, not easily accessible. Good traditional Chinese medicine, not easily accessible. Good chiropractic medicine, not easily accessible. Good chiropractors worth their weight in gold as far as I'm concerned. Homeopathic medicine, don't even get me started. All of the effective, curative systems of holistic medicine have been sidelined. They are not easily accessible. And when you do find somebody who is actually good at what they do in the holistic medicine world, you have to pay out of the pocket for it. And most people can't afford that because all of their healthcare dollars are going to medical insurance premiums that only allow them access to MDs who are now the first, second, or third leading cause of death in the United States, and under whose tutelage and care we've gone from the frying pan into the fire. And because of the medical monopoly driven by the pharmaceutical industry, you can't, the average person does not want to believe that their therapeutics might be bad. Can't go there. Can't go there. What's this? The COVID stuff was bad? What's this? Vaccinations are bad? What are you talking about? You must be a quack. And here we are. So, this from the let's, beat a dead horse department. It seems like every time I get up on the public stage, I say the same thing in a different way. But it bears repeating because I have to drive this into people's heads. Your medical doctor may be the nicest person God ever created, but your medical doctor doesn't practice medicine. They practice allopathic medicine. And allopathic medicine is excellent for trauma care, military field medicine, surgery when it's necessary, the complications of childbirth, and dentistry. But for everything else, it is a ridiculous, dangerous, juvenile methodology, which is the third leading cause of death in the United States. I think it's the leading cause of death in the United States. I'm with Gary Null et al. So, ironically, tragically, interestingly, the most important thing that you can do to secure your health moving forward is to fire your medical doctor. Only use them for emergency stuff. Only use them after everything else has failed. You wouldn't believe the things myself and my colleagues have seen our patients recover from. You wouldn't believe it. In a perfect world, in a free medical market, people would use the holistic method as primary and only use the allopathic medicine as a fallback if the holistic stuff doesn't work. Why? Because the holistic medical disciplines attempt to cure the problem. And, given the choice, well, okay, John Doe, you've got rheumatoid arthritis. Okay, what would you rather do? Would you rather go to a licensed medical professional who is going to attempt to figure out the nature of the problem and cure it, and strengthen your body into the bargain? Or would you rather go to a licensed medical professional who has no idea what the operative cause of your illness was and who is just going to medicate your symptoms into submission, making you weaker and more dependent on the drug and then the surgical procedure over time? Which would you rather do? Everybody, not most people, but everybody would rather go to this doctor who was going to attempt to cure the condition. Why don't people do that? Because the medical monopoly does not allow access to these disciplines. That does not allow access to these disciplines. I have colleagues, across medical disciplines that had over 98% success rates, some 100% success rates with treating COVID patients. Now, you would think that given those numbers that the naturopathic doctors and the Ayurvedic practitioners would have been the people invited to the table. So what are you guys doing? How do you treat this? What do you do about it? You think that we would have been invited to the table initially. In a free medical market, fair and just, open society, we would have, but that does not jibe with the pharmaceutical agenda. It doesn't. Thank God for insulin. Thank God for lidocaine. Thank God for general anesthesia. But for goodness sakes, you can't drug your way to health. You can't do it. But because of the medical monopoly, everybody has been brainwashed into thinking that that's the only thing that you can do, the only thing that you should do, and everybody else is a back-of-the-bus quack. So here we are at the crossroads. You can continue to do what you're doing, ladies and gentlemen, with conventional medicine, and continue to experience the same results with conventional medicine, and continue to be more drugged and more surgeried and weaker the older that you get with conventional medical treatments. Or you can abandon that method and seek out alternatives, which are science-based and clinically verified. And it would be in your best interest to do that. I mean, history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. If the story's true, not everybody who had the chance to got on board Noah's Ark. So get on board the Ark. And in this metaphor, the Ark is science-based, clinically verified, holistic medicine. And I will show you how to do it. That's why I exist. Visit my website, leavebigpharmabehind.com. Right here, leavebigpharmabehind.com. And let me introduce you to the undiscovered country by most of science-based, clinically verified, licensed and regulated naturopathic medicine. Healing the body is much easier than you have been led to believe. There is a wealth of information that has been hidden from your view on purpose. Let me show it to you before I am deplatformed. I am now and always will be, God willing and the creek don't rise, your steadfast advocate for naturopathic medicine, holistic healing, and a free medical market. And Dr. Peter Glidden. See you around campus.